Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. Today I have Mr. Charlie Cichetti from,
Cichetti like spaghetti, no problem.
there we
Cichetti.
go, Cichetti like spaghetti, I love it, from Sustainable Investment Group. So welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on board today.
Yeah, Wendy, thanks. This is great.
And so you guys specialize in green building, consulting, engineering, and also energy audits. And I don't think most people understand what an energy audit is. So would you mind talking about your company, your services, and just some details on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Sustainable Investment Group, or SIG, started the company 12 and a half years ago, and mainly commercial buildings. So we help buildings design and build green as well as operate green. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, but we've got team members in DC, New York, Minneapolis, Austin, and now out your way, San Francisco and LA. So small but growing business. Been doing this a long time. Energy audits would be for an existing commercial building or an existing home. So in an energy audit, we want to find the known low cost and the capital projects we could do to save energy in this building. Picture an office building, or maybe your home. And something I know you and I have talked about is you want to make sure you save as much energy as possible. Then you don't need as many solar panels, say, on your home. Make sure you're efficient first. So an energy audit is where could we save energy, but not just big projects. An energy audit is the no and low cost, and then some capital projects to save energy.
So what could someone do just to make themselves more efficient, both commercial and residential? What's like an easy win?
Sure. Well, on the commercial side, I mean, where you have, budgets where every year you're trying to improve your buildings, there still are buildings that need to do some LED lighting retrofits, not just your exit signs and common areas, but actually in the tenant space. If it's a net lease, maybe the tenant, of course, is going to reduce their power bill inside of your building, and you can cost share that. Maybe there's rebates there. Where I'm at in Atlanta, most of the office buildings are gross leases, right? My rent includes my power bill. So it's really in the landlord's favor to go ahead and do, yes, LED lighting retrofits, but of course, just run times, especially in a hybrid work mode, right, Wendy?
Yeah.
Coming out of the pandemic, it's like, hey, if this tenant's not going to be there on Fridays because they let their employees work from home on Fridays more than ever, let's turn off lights. Let's turn off equipment. Let's adjust those run times in our HVAC schedule. So those are some basics, but those translate to our homes too. So let's make sure we have really efficient lighting. I know last year Lowe's was running a 60% discount on LED lights. So I went in there, bought them, and I retrofitted my entire house because then the price really made sense to do that. But you can even put timers in our closets. Before you go into your closet, am I going to have the lights on for 1 minute, 5 minutes, 15 minutes? Just make sure we have efficient lighting and HVAC, but turn it off or adjust it down when you're not using it.
I love the fact you brought up usage of electricity. That's an easy win where people could just turn off lights and as you said, go in the closet, set the timers. Also, appliances. We've talked to people in the past who have, energy efficient appliances, or they're retrofitting older appliances to be better nowadays. So with respect to construction, which is what you do, you have so many designations after your name, I could barely keep track of them. Primarily LEED and WELL and A, just so many. Most people don't realize that the actual construction building of a building, it has a huge carbon footprint. What do you recommend for people to reduce that initial carbon footprint in the construction design phase?
Thanks for asking. With buildings, homes too, but with buildings, we're so focused, and we have been for a long time, on what we call operational carbon. So how efficient is this building going to be, right? Can it be a LEED platinum building? Now, that's something I built my green building consulting firm around is LEED consulting. But we're still setting up the building to be like a Tesla of a building.
Yeah.
But what about the during construction process? That, you nailed it, is getting more eyes on it than ever. And we call that embodied carbon. How much energy did it take to go into those materials that we're going to build the building out of? Have we greened up our construction site? How much energy and water do we use during construction? So we're seeing a shift because our buildings are getting more efficient. We still have work to do, but that's called operating carbon. what if we move over here and look at that supply chain, the actual construction and materials that we select, and we
Mhm.
really want to reduce that? So, you really want to start with tracking it. Hey, how much energy, water, and waste do we have during construction? So a lot of contractors don't track it. So start there.
Ah,
And then the next one is some of your structural materials, your concrete or your steel. Really push on your structural engineer, your contractor. Can we use low carbon concrete? Do you have an alternative material here that we can prove out it actually is less of an impact to produce that material? So just start asking great questions. I promise you a shift is happening to move from not just an efficient building, but what are we building these buildings out of, and are we even greening up our construction site?
yeah, I know a lot of people are using modular design, 3D printing, shipping containers. I
Yep.
remember when I was underwriting for insurance, uh, this is going back, I think, to 2006 or 7. I got an account for building a little house out of shipping containers. And the company was like, "What? What are they doing?" And I thought it was brilliant.
No, and that's what we're talking about. We might not have called it this yet, but embodied carbon, like how can we reuse some materials? How can we take a byproduct and maybe use that now, or less waste, right? When we do the modular construction and we're actually building most of the building at a factory, at a warehouse, then bringing it on site, we've got less waste and less to dispose of.
That's great. So, just talking about SIG, your company, I mean, starting this 12 years ago is kind of huge because a lot of people weren't really focused on green construction back then. They didn't really think about it. So, the services you guys offer, where can people find you? Um, Basically, tell them about you, what you're doing.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for this megaphone about what we're doing. So mainly green building consulting, engineering, training. We are getting more into ESG, right? Environmental, social governance. I love the name here that you have, of course, because we're seeing that shift where even large real estate companies will tie their executives' compensation towards
Yep.
hitting sustainability goals for their, in my world, real estate portfolio. So we will help an individual project earn a certification, a plaque that this is a green building or a healthy building, right? Healthy buildings have been around for about 6.5 years. The pandemic hit, and next thing you know, hey, is this a healthy building or not? How do I get my occupants to my building to come back? And so we're doing a lot of healthy building work. Green buildings, I'd argue, LEED's been around for 20, almost 21 years now. So those are the two that we focus on the most is LEED and green buildings, and now the new healthy building programs, Well and Fit Well. That's a CDC program. Our website, sigearth.com, SIGEARTH.com. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia at our headquarters. I'd love to connect on LinkedIn if anybody's just like, hey, I've got a project coming up. What are your thoughts on this? I always like to just compare notes, but do start with efficiency first, and then you
Yeah.
won't need as many renewables later if you happen to want to put renewables on your project. That's just one statement I've always heard. And I think sometimes we skip past it. We try to go right to the best technology, to the silver bullet technology to fix a building or home, and it's sustainability, but there's still some basics we got to get right first.
One of the things, well, thank you for the compliment on the ESG, on environmental social justice. A lot of people are swiping that name now. I've done some Google searches, so I am the original. And focusing on ESG and training people is hugely important because, just doing it for them is one thing, teaching people how to do it moving forward is another. And then on our final note, cost. Most people say it's so expensive, but the reality being, yes, the upfront cost is there, but the savings in the operating of your building is huge.
No, you're right. Um, if you're a new commercial building out of the ground and you want to earn a LEED certification, LED, I'd argue with anybody it's only a one, no more than 2% premium to go through, upgrade your building, get the official certification that you designed and built green. An existing building, maybe it's 50 years old. It needs a lot of retrofits of the toilets and the HVAC. So you might have a little more to spend to just get to where you can play the game of getting one of these certifications. So that one kind of depends. But at your house, here in Atlanta, I'm trying to make my home even more energy efficient. It was built in 1970, really well built home. and I'd love to put solar panels, but I know I've got to tighten up some things first and how we even operate as a family. Then I want to do solar, but the payback in Georgia is about 7 years, 7.5 years on solar. Out in Arizona or Southern California, Hawaii, maybe it's 3.5, 4 year payback. So I think it's do the math, get the quotes, and just kind of see where this is going to play out with your home or with your commercial building project. But on the cost side, if you're not going for a full certification, then I would definitely take a look and make sure you're asking not just how much is this going to save me in energy costs, but how much is it going to save me in maintenance? Or how much is this going to save me, when to get this one, in penalties avoided? In New York City, there's new laws that if your commercial building doesn't come in under a certain emissions from a baseline to how much you're actually allowed by 2024, you're going to get fined hundreds of thousands of dollars if you haven't really kept up with your efficiencies. There's a certain limit that you're going to be allowed for that type and size building. So make sure when you're looking at a energy saving project, not just how much energy will it save me on my bills, what about maintenance savings, and what about penalties avoided savings? Then it's a faster payback.
I never thought about the penalties. That is interesting. And I believe it's coming. I mean, New York is probably the first I've heard of this, but it makes sense.
That's what I see is the new construction residential laws are being led by California, electrification, all electric homes, right? But as far as existing building retrofits, it's coming out of New York City first.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I love hearing that because it's important. We need to be more efficient in our construction. And some of the buildings that were built, 15, 20 years ago may not have been the most solid construction. So we have to fix that.
And we're finding out now, you're right.
Yeah. Just we didn't know. Everything's a learning experience. So thank you so much. Oh, before I let you go, one quick question on solar, since you brought up solar. Efficiencies and storage and energy generating capabilities. Solar panels just get better and better and better and better and cheaper and cheaper. I mean, the cost of a solar panel 20 years ago versus today is apples and oranges. I mean, it's so much more cost effective now. What about efficiency and ability to generate electricity from, let's say, 10 years ago to now? Before so much as a branch got in the way of your solar panel, you drop 50% energy right there. But it's my understanding that they're so efficient now that you can have trees somewhat blocking and still generate enough electricity.
No, I think you're onto it there. The efficiencies in the panels, and so how much of that electricity do we actually get to keep and use is much better. The costs have gone down. You did mention the batteries too, because I think that's important for anyone that's just considering solar, even if it's small, just to supplement your home or your building. Are we pulling from a grid that's getting more eco-friendly here in the state of Georgia? Georgia might, I don't know what it's thought of in the South, but we actually get 65% renewables. There's a little more work to do, but we've actually done a pretty good job of biomass, large solar farms in South Georgia. And so you have to ask yourself, okay, what can I do on my property? What can I do? New developments are going to have community solar, of course, that's feeding into just some homes that's part of a neighborhood. But then, what am I doing when I pull from the grid? Is it a greener grid? But batteries are important. And, it's one thing to be resilient so you can be off of the grid. But if you were to, be attached to the grid and you lose power with some of these crazy storms we have, do you have battery backup instead of a gas generator backup for your home?
Yeah.
But then I think where everybody needs to be reading up more is I'm a big fan of electric vehicles. I've been driving electric cars for 10 years, 3 different models. And it's like the F-150 Lightning, the Ford F-150 Lightning. That's going to get 450 miles in range. It's going to have a pretty sizable battery, but when that's plugged up to your house, yes, that's kind of a smart grid. If you needed to, you could pull some of the electricity back into your home. And I think just the lay consumer needs to know that the vehicle they drive one day, there is going to be this relationship where that makes your home more resilient. And if you had some solar and you actually had a battery there, you don't have to buy the Tesla Powerwall, even though I think that's great. That's coming, and it's coming fast. And you just need to understand a little bit about that relationship between, am I pulling from a grid that's pretty green or it's getting greened up in my state versus the batteries that may soon come in the form of my car and maybe a little solar. How is all that going to work together? It's actually not too complicated.
I love the fact you brought up the Ford F-150. I'm from Detroit, so I love Ford,
Oh, there you
hometown.
go.
But more importantly, during that ice storm in Texas, I believe people were using their Ford F-150s as a source of energy.
Hmm. Yeah, I know that was really showed our vulnerability to the power grid there
Yeah.
in Texas. And so, most of the solar and wind that's generated is in the middle of the country, but most of the population in the U.S. is on the coast and big cities. And it's like, man, how do we figure this out? And I think it is going to get localized. Community solar. What can you do on your home and your property? On a large commercial building, it's hard to put enough solar panels to power an entire skyscraper, right? You don't have enough roof space for that, and you don't have acres and acres of land for that. But I think that's going to be more of the regional and community renewables getting fed into our neighborhoods and our cities.
Yeah, I'm all for the microgrids. I'm all for, everyone sharing electricity. And I remember years ago, I don't know if we're there yet, but they were talking about where solar panels, or not really a panel, but you could paint on a coating
Mm,
onto a window and it could capture that electricity. We're not there yet. It's a great
yeah.
concept. Looking forward to when that day comes. So
Come-
you guys are
come-
doing awesome things. Thank you for what you're doing. So
Thank you.
of course, so Sustainable Investment Group, SIG, look up Charlie, connect with him on LinkedIn, and try to make your life a little bit greener.
Love it. Thank you, Wendy.
You guys take care. Thank you so much.